Hello, this is Luke, and I'm back with another episode of building a self-hosted analytics service from scratch. This is episode 2. In the last one, we kind of stubbed out some of the functionality, and now we're going to continue to work on it. Before I jump into that, though, I do want to call out, I have a new monitor that I got last week, and it has a different aspect ratio. So there's a 3:2 aspect ratio now. If you're wondering why things look a little different, that's why. Hopefully it doesn't affect the bitrate or anything like that too much. I'll take a look after the stream, see if there's any settings that need to be adjusted. Okay. So let's get started here. Let's run the dev server. Whoops. Don't know what's up with that. Run the bundler. And we should be good. Okay, so let's open up the server as well. I believe the dashboard listening on port 3001. So localhost 3001. So we haven't made a whole lot of progress on the dashboard here yet. As you can see, it's just some very basic stuff. And before I actually do that, I'm going to do a little bit of refactoring of the code. So what we have here is basically there's 3 components to this app, at least right now. 3 major separately compiled chunks of JavaScript. So not just modules, but like actual entry points. There's the tracker that people load on their site in order to track visitors. And since this is a self-hosted tool, by people, I mean me or you if you're running it yourself. There's the server, which serves the tracker, and it also serves all of the stuff for the dashboard. And then there's the dashboard, which is, of course, a client-side JavaScript application as well. So those 3 separate pieces of JavaScript, we sort of want to make sure that we have them thoroughly disentangled in our code base, although allowing us to share code between them if we want to, especially between the dashboard and the server. The tracker probably will have less code sharing because a big part of that is to minimize the size of that file. Okay, so let's start by making new folders for those. So we already have a dashboard folder. I'm going to go ahead and make a tracker folder, and I'm going to make a server folder as well. I think. We'll see how it feels to have a server folder. And this client is the tracker. So I'm going to go ahead and move this into tracker, and I'm going to rename this index.ts. And we'll need to update this source tracker index.ts. And I will call this tracker because why not? Doesn't really matter what that's called. Although if I am renaming that, I need to call this tracker too. Okay. So that's fine. One other thing with the tracker is we're importing from this shared module. But if we actually look at the compiled output here, this is, over 17,000 lines of code. And the reason that we have all of this code in here is because the tracker is importing getVisitID, and then this module is importing random UUID from crypto using the Node API. So this does work and it gets all bundled down, but there's no reason to do that. What we can do instead is just have this be like window.crypto.randomUID. And that way it's just directly using the native browser API. There's nothing to import. And as long as all we're doing is generating a UUID, there wasn't a whole lot of benefit in having that shared code anyway. So that's actually something I have in my notes here. Let's check that off. Okay, so now our tracker is this totally independent file. And I'm probably going to need to rerun this script here since I moved it. And I might as well delete this client.js here as well. Delete that. Now if we look at the tracker, it doesn't have all that 17,000 lines of code, but it has the same functionality. That's good. Okay. Now let's take this index.ts, which is related to the server. This is all server stuff. And I'm going to move this into server. And this shared thing, because we're no longer doing this get visit ID being shared, I'm going to actually just move this function here and delete this shared file altogether. How come I can't import this? Okay. And let's delete this shared. So now we have these three separate folders. I'm also going to need to update this source server index.ts to run that. And let's go over here and restart this. Oh, and I need to do this ... Yes. Cool. Okay, now the next thing I kind of want to do, just to kind of save myself some time later, this is a perfect example here where I had to adjust that import path. I'd like to use an import path alias. This is something that I typically set up in my apps, and I never really remember exactly what the syntax is, so I just look at another app and copy it from there. So let's go to another app of mine, and we want this business. And I don't know if we need the base URL with it too or not, but let's just try putting this in and see how that works. So now here, for example, I could do @/dashboard, and that will work no matter what folder this file is in. If I move it into a different folder, I won't have to update the import path. Let's go ahead and rerun that and make sure it's still working. And it is. Very good. Okay. Now let's start splitting this server stuff into some modules as well. In particular, one other thing that I also like to do in these cases where I have multiple entry points, and again, I'm just going to copy this, is have a server only file. And there's a lot of ways that somebody could do this. This is just the way that works all right for me. But basically, it's just checking whether this property is set. In the dashboard, like in a browser, this is not set, but in the Bun server, this is set. So we can easily tell whether it's a server only file or not. And then here, for example, we could say something like, we go all the way up to the top, import @server only. To basically say, if you try and import this file in the dashboard, it just is going to get an error. It's not actually going to import it. Ultimately, there's not really a security concern if it was imported on the dashboard. It's just not going to work. You'll immediately hit errors with this process.n, for example. So we kind of make sure that it's explicitly stated that it only runs on the server. Okay, so let's make a new file here. Let's actually make a new module, and I will call this events. And then in here, I'm going to make a new file called schema. And the idea here is we're going to define the schema for our events in a way that's going to be usable on both the client and the server. and independent of any particular protocol. So let's see. Let's just kind of copy this for a moment. I'm not going to leave this in here, but I'm going to use it as a reference. And then I'm going to import Zod. And we're going to do event schema equals Zod.object. And here we're going to define the schema for our events. So ID is a UUID. User ID is a string. And really, I believe it's a base64 encoded SHA-256 hash, but we don't necessarily need to be that specific here. The point is it's just some kind of opaque string. There's a URL, which is also a string. Start time. And the start time, I guess, is required. And there's an end time, which is optional and nullish, which is saying that this value might not be there. It might be null or undefined, which is what nullish says, or it might not even be present in the object at all, which is what optional says. And then we're going to export this. And we're going to have an interface for this as well. Export type event. And I guess I should call that something else because event is probably a type already. I wonder. Yeah, it's already a type. So I would call this I don't know, user event. And that will be z.infer event schema. Oh, and I need a type of, right? Yep, like that. So now the user event type is this. And we can get rid of this, right? Okay, so that can be used on the server now. Like for these schemas here, we could say, for example, record API schema could actually be well, let's just leave it for now, actually. The main place these events are going to be used, or these schemas are going to be used, is actually in the dashboard. These specific kind of tracking APIs are a bit of a special case. So I'm not sure if we want events for that. Okay, and then I'm going to create maybe like a utilities file. Let's do that, util. And I'll make a new thing in here. User ID.ts. And, we're just trying to get this a little bit organized. This is the kind of thing that I like to have in a utility file because it might be reused. But even if it's not reused, it just helps keep the server file a little bit more focused on specifically the server functionality instead of defining everything in here. This get visit ID one, I kind of just want to get rid of that function. It's only called in one place, and we can just do random UUID instead. Okay. Cool. So now for the events, I'm also going to do a file here for a model.ts. And this one is going to be server only. And the idea here is we're going to define our SQL related stuff in this file. So like, for example, down here, we have this thing where it's looking up all of the events. Actually, this one's looking up the event, a single event. So let's actually put that in our model. Export function get event by ID. This could be user event ID, user event. And so user event, we can import from the schema. User event ID, I'm going to define in the schema as well, because that's kind of a commonly used type. And that would be user event ID. So now this should be a string. And we can import that as well. And we can import the database. Oh, actually we need to, let's split that out too. So I'm going to make a new file called db.ts. And this is kind of similar to the standard application structure that I frequently use. Here, this database, again, it's not like the IntelliSense is not detecting these like bun specific types, it seems like, for some reason. But that would be this. Let's just get that out of there, put it in here. And then we're going to need another file called config.ts. And we're just sort of continuing to unwind all the code that's coupled together in this server. So usually I like to put anything loaded from an environment variable all in one file. In theory, you could say, well, db file is a database specific configuration, so just put it in db.ts. No other file will need that. And that's true. But then if somebody's looking at the code, it can be really difficult to understand what are all the environment variables that are used in this app. Also, it makes those other modules, it's sort of like a side effect. It's not really a side effect, I guess, because you're not updating anything, but it's reading from the environment in a way that makes these modules less encapsulated. So instead, I like to do it this way, where everything is imported in like a standard config file. And then, if you want to test your code, you can just mock the values in this config file instead of having to figure out what values you need to mock in various other files throughout the app. And again, we'll switch this to use the @ Okay, so now we have our database, which we need to export. And this can be imported and used in whatever files. I'm also going to, well, we'll worry about that in a moment. I'm going to put these in there. This is like setup that we always want to run. It's specific to the database. So just put it in there, seems fine. Okay. And we can go over here, we can just update this import, kind of clean some of these things up. We don't need these. Can import this. Okay. And this too, I'm actually going to take out and I'm going to put in our model. Create event table. And it's just going to do this. Okay. And then we can call that from our database function here. So this is sort of like not really migration logic, but that kind of thing. This is our database setup, but we don't, because this function here involves knowing the schema of events it's more tightly coupled to the events module. The database module just has to know we need to create this table. But this way, I don't have to remember to edit this file every time I'm adding a new column or whatever to that table. It's all encapsulated in this model module. And eventually we could even generate this SQL string automatically, but I probably won't do that. Okay, so we have another problem here. If I return this, well, first of all, this needs to be an array. And this needs to be ID, just like that. So we're getting an error here because we don't know the type that we're returning here. And I can just kind of declare that by adding, a generic thingy to this. I think here, user event or something like that. But I'm actually going to pass it through our schema instead to do validation and also potentially do some pre-processing on these values. So what's our schema called? Event schema. So we're going to do event schema.parse. And with that, or no, that's not right. Actually, let's undo that for a moment. Because this is returning a .all, we sort of need to do a .map. Value event schema .parse value. Okay, so now you see the types are working, and I didn't have to do any explicit declarations in that function. And also, if there happens to be an invalid value in the database, for some reason, this will return an error. Or throw an error, I should say. So we can also make a function get all events. And again, this is all just kind of plumbing for our dashboard. Oh, and that, I kind of got these mixed up. So this one's actually get all events, right? Or no. Yeah, this is a bit weird. So this should just be .all, and we don't need a where. And then this one should be .get, and we don't need a map because there only ever should be one of these. So we actually should be doing it like that. And this should be a single value. Yes, like so. Okay, and we can also have some functions here to update event, let's call it. And this will be, we'll take an ID and a partial user event. Oh yeah, data. And that will return a user event. And so now what we're going to do is we might as well verify the data. So we could do like z dot partial, or no, it would be, let's undo that. Event schema dot partial dot parse data. And this could be like const valid data. And then we would do db.update or .query, I guess. Update events. And one of the things I like to do too is just have a table name. Like that, and use that in my queries because otherwise I often forget, like, is it like event singular or events plural. I've worked on so many different apps over the years, and they all have different conventions around that. So you sort of forget, you know? And we'll do the same thing here. And we'll do the same thing down here. And here we have an interesting situation where we're doing a set, but we don't necessarily know exactly what columns we want to set. It depends on what's in our data object. So this is where an ORM will help us. One moment. Okay, just had a spam chatter to ban. Okie doke. So we've got our data. So kind of the way I want to do this is I want to look at this data object and dynamically construct our SQL query based on that. Yes. So let's make some functions for that. And we'll probably extract these into a different file, but for now, let's just put them in here. So function update keys for object. Object something like that. And this is going to return a string. And so what this will do is return object dot, let's do it like this, object dot keys of the object. And I think we just need to do a join with a comma. So then here we would do like set. Well, actually, so this will work for, let's do create keys. But for update, we're actually going to need to use both the keys and the values. Update for object, sure. And this would be more like object.entries .map key value. It's going to return the key, and then it equals, and then the value. And I guess the value, so there's a bit of an issue here where sometimes the value needs, like if it's a string, we need to wrap it in quotes. Otherwise we don't. There's maybe something we can do here if we do, Oh, right. Okay. I just remembered. We're going to be using parameters for the values. So actually, we don't need to worry about that here, but we do need to have this be with like a colon in front of it to kind of inject it as a parameter. So this is going to be, you know, something like, and that actually is just going to be the key again then. And this could actually just be object.keys, and this would just be k. So this would be like key equals key, like that. Okay, so then we can just do that here. Update for object. valid data. And, we need a where ID equals ID. And I'm going to add a returning as well, so we get our data back. And then this will be .get, and we will pass in data, data, and ID, like so. So by doing this, we're passing in actually valid data. All of these valid data things as parameters, and ID is also a parameter because it's used in the where clause. And then I guess we could return that event schema.parse, this thing again, like that. Okay, so the nice thing about this approach is if we're adding a new column here, we don't have to update this code at all. Also, we don't have to know like, oh, I need to manually write my SQL query based on what properties I'm updating or not updating. It's just going to automatically look at the properties that you're updating and construct the query appropriately. So this is a lot like what an ORM would get you. And I did consider using an ORM for this app, but I thought I would try this approach instead, where we're writing it ourselves. It's not that much more complicated than just writing the SQL queries, and it is a lot more flexible. So now let's do another one where it's like create event. And in this case, it's not going to be like that. It's actually going to be a whole user event, not partial. Or maybe it will be partial. No. Whole user event, like so. And this, no longer partial here. So we're getting our data, we're inserting it into the database. And so here we would do like insert. I can never remember the insert syntax. You'd think it wouldn't be that hard to remember. Yeah, this one. So insert into table, and then columns in parentheses, and then values. So insert into table. Then we would do something in parentheses, and then values, and then some other stuff in parentheses. And we will keep our returning clause here as well. I think you can do returning on insert, right? Yeah. Okay, and this will just be valid data. So what are we going to put in these two parentheses? Well, again, we don't want to have to write all this stuff out manually. So we're going to have create keys for object, which we already have, and create values for object. And this will be .map v colon v. Basically, we're converting the value, and I probably should just call that k for consistency, into a parameter, right? So then this would be create keys for object, valid data. And this would be create values for object, valid data. Okay. And this, we don't need that ... because we're not adding anything in there, and we don't need the braces either. Just passing valid data right into the query. One little note, the reason that this actually works is because in our database here, we're adding this strict mode flag. So if you don't have this set, you need to do something like this in your parameters, where you have like a $, or whatever. so it matches this exactly. But with strict mode on, that doesn't need to be the case. It just needs to be name. And so like this. And so this way you can just pass that valid object directly in there without needing to do any munging of those keys at all. It makes it a lot more convenient. So I highly recommend using strict mode for new projects with Bun SQL. This is like a Bun SQL thing. I imagine they added strict mode because they didn't want to break backwards compatibility with this change, but really this should probably have been the default behavior, in my opinion. And I think that they kind of wish that it was too, although maybe I'm reading into it. But okay. So we've got our model functions here. And I could write tests for these, but I'm not going to do that. Usually, partly because like on stream, I don't feel like writing tests is a good use of time. Partly because for side projects, I often don't write tests anyway. If I were to, usually I get Claude Code to write the tests for me, which works pretty well because as sort of a lazy test writer, I often don't write as many tests as Claude Code does. So it can generate some pretty comprehensive test coverage. But we're not going to do that right now. Maybe we'll add tests later. Okay, so now another thing is these functions here, I'm actually going to put into the DB file. Or maybe I'll put it in here. I'll make a SQL helper and we'll put them in there. So these can all import those from that utility file because we'll use those in future models as well. Okay. And yeah. Trying to think what else should I do here, if anything. One question I kind of had for myself is like, what is the difference between these different types of parameters? Like there can be like a colon parameter, a $sign parameter. I don't really know if it matters which you use or not. Like this. And I think that's like a SQL thing. But I don't know if it really matters at all. Let me see here. Difference between param, and param. This isn't really helpful. It's also not really helpful. This is not the right type of parameters, I feel like. Let's see if there's something in here. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know if there is a difference. Anyway, for now, I'll just keep it as a colon. Hey, how's it going? It's going good. Just, I was trying to understand like if there's a difference between like colon ID versus like dollar $ID when you're doing SQL parameters. I don't know if you happen to know that. But at the moment, I'm just sort of separating out what we had last week into kind of some more encapsulated modules. So I've created like a schema for our events and a model for changing that. And yeah, just kind of splitting out the app into some more modules. Ultimately, this is going to be really beneficial once we start adding a lot of code on the server and the client, I think. ChatGPT link. I like it. Okay, let's see. Hmm. So it kind of doesn't really matter because I think my SQL driver supports both. So that's good. I thought there was like maybe like one of them was used for um, like names and a different one for values, but it seems like that's not the case. Okay. Um, let's fix our type errors in server now that we've refactored all this stuff, and then we can make another commit here. So update import. I split all of the environment variable holding imports into a config file here. Also, the database stuff is in this database file. And yeah, we defined a server only file that can be used to throw an error if a server file is imported on the client when it shouldn't be. So here, instead of doing this, this should return get event by ID, request.params.id. This one should be get all events. This one should be insert or create event. And I guess it would be this, basically. And what are we missing here? Missing URL. Right. We are missing that. And I was going to have that be calculated on the server somehow. Let's just do that for now. Now what are we missing? Start time number is not assigned to, oops, that's a schema issue. So this should actually be a number. And so should this. Is create event async? No, actually it's not. It's an interesting thing about the Bun SQLite API is that it's not async. Like this db.query.get, it doesn't return a promise. So yeah, kind of weird, but it's kind of convenient as well. Although I don't really have a problem with async stuff, but it kind of makes sense because it's like there's no network request when it's doing that, right? It's just writing a file. Obviously, I/O is usually async as well. So It could be async, but it's just not. Anyway. And then this finish one down here, we're also going to do update event ID body. And what is the ID? I guess it would be body.id. And let's just do end time, body.end time. Okay. So that should have gotten all of the actual SQL out of our, oh, here's some more SQL. Let's do this one as well. This is a create event. And it's just going to create this. And we're going to just do that for now. Okay. Okie doke. And we no longer have our DB import. That's good. So now we're all kind of separation of concern-ified. Let's make a commit before I do too much more crazy stuff here. So I'm probably just going to do all of this stuff at once. It's kind of a lot, but refactor, module structure, and SQL logic to separate concerns better. Sure, whatever. Not actually doing any functional changes in this whole commit. It should all just be refactoring stuff. Okay. And did I put, yeah, server only on the module, but not on the schema? And this one should be server only too. Whoops. Yep. And the config, this should also be server only actually, because, you know, if you try and read one of these environment variables on the client, that's obviously not going to work. This SQL one doesn't really matter. That's server only. This one is server only because otherwise it's not going to work. Cool. Okay, let's just rebuild from scratch here since we moved all these files and stuff. Make sure that it's still doing something reasonable. If I refresh this, yep, it's still working. Cool. Okay, there we go. All right. Now we can actually add some features and stuff. First, I guess I should probably fix that URL thing. So let's do that. Now, I kind of wish I could attach a debugger here. Usually I don't use debuggers very much because they're kind of a pain to set up. But I'm sort of tempted to try. You know, it's good to try new things. Fun debugger. -- inspect. It's pretty standard. And you can set a port. Probably a good idea to explicitly set a port. So this would be like here on this dev, I could do dash dash inspect something or other. Sure. And then what? This is cool. It's just like a website. Let's open the provided URL. Let's see what that does. Oh, no, that's not the right thing. This one. Is it going to like give me a website URL? No. What if I click on this? How does this work? I want to use VS Code, but I'm just kind of curious how this thing works too. I don't know how this works. Obviously, it's got to connect somehow. Is it? I wonder if I need to do this. Like if I put this there, is it going to actually do something different? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now it does give me a URL there. So let's copy this. Put it over here. Let's do a new tab here so it actually detects that something's different. Okay. See, this is interesting. But what are all these? So where's my server index.ts? Here it is. Okay, so if I put a breakpoint here, no, not there. It would be here. Yeah. And then let's do the other thing. So we kind of have to run this demo.html as well. Python http.server. So that's on port 8000. So now if I open localhost 8000 demo.html, oops, localhost. Okay, so that should have done the thing. If I look at the network tab, refresh, not found tracker.js. Oh, I think I need to update a file path here. Dist tracker.js. Yes. And this needs to be /tracker.js. It's kind of annoying that I have to keep that in sync manually. Okay, so now it did the record and we hit the breakpoint. This is kind of cool. So I could do like rec.headers, and that's a thing, right? .get all. Oh, I see. That's like a... I could do .entries. Array.from. It's kind of a pain. This is weird. I feel like I can hear my computer taking off. Like something's using the GPU. I mean, obviously my streaming is, but it's like since I opened this page. Yeah, so as expected, there's no, like the refer is not what we want because it should be /demo.html. We're not seeing that there. Is there some other property on the request that we could use to get that maybe? Or do we have to pass it in from the client? I feel like I thought about this last time and kind of forgot. I think we might need to pass it in from the client. Yeah. And it actually is being. Okay. Let's go ahead and re-enable that and play. This is really cool. I do kind of want to set it up with Node too, though. It's got to be a better way. Or I mean VS Code. Doesn't really say how to do that here. Oh, maybe I scrolled past it. To use it, you'll need to install the Bun VS Code extension. Click this one. This one. Oven.bun-VS Code. Oven.bun-VS Code. Yep. Yeah, let's try this out. Oh, wow. It's got all kinds of stuff. Okay, install it. Yep. And then I need this, I guess. Let's just manually put it in there. We can make a new file, launch.json. probably not strictly necessary to do all this, but I do find myself curious. So program file. Attach to bun. Yeah. So if I get rid of this and run this, port 6499, and then I should be able to do task, run task, bun. No, how do I start debugging? Attach to bun, run. I can't really tell if it worked. I don't think it worked. Do I need that little weird path? Okay, now it says it's attached. And I don't see errors. And I've got this thing up there. If I kind of do the same thing here, breakpoint, refresh, it hits the breakpoint. Okay, slick. What I don't like is I sort of have to copy paste that value in there each time. Probably a better way. I see another ChatGPT post. Let me look at this one too. Dunkity dunk. Oh, this, yeah. Okay. Included explicitly in the request. Yeah. Okay, we'll do that. We shall do that. And this I don't actually need right now, so we can detach it. But I'm glad it got set up. Let me commit that actually. So we've got this. That doesn't really matter. Add bun debugging task. All right, let's do it like this. Add bun debugging support. Okay. And I'll do this too. This is sort of its own thing. Add server only to files. And fix path for tracking script route. Okay. Okay, so we need to pass it through manually. That's going to be a problem when it comes to the NoScript script. It might not be possible for that if we need to pass it through manually. That should be pretty rare though, and it's not really that big of a deal. I almost want to add a property to the model that's like NoScript. And to indicate it's a Boolean, we could do like is no script or something. Just so that when I'm actually doing these analytics in the dashboard, it's like I'll be able to tell the difference, right? And then I'll add that to my schema here as well. Is no script Boolean. And that could default to false. Default false. So because that has the default value in there, I don't know. There's like a special type. It's like z dot input. Yeah, so like the input, no script is optional because the schema is actually mutating it. But infer, it's required because that's what the schema ultimately produces. So I might have like actually a separate type here. z.input. And this is going to be used anywhere we're sending a user event in as opposed to where we're getting a user event out. So here and here, we'll do that. And now we don't have any errors because that's going to be automatically set to false. But in this no script one, we do want to set is no script to true. Okay, and let's get rid of that. And we know we can't get it from the referrer, but there might be some other way to get it someday that I figure out, or ChatGPT figures out. And this URL is going to be coming in from the body. It's going to need to be passed in here. URL, string. And these are kind of redundant with the schema for the actual event, but they're also kind of not. There's a distinction between the schema for your input for your controller and the schema for the the actual row stored in the database, right? Sometimes those are aligned. Like for these API routes here, they're aligned. What you put in should actually be an exact user event, and what you get out is an exact user event. But for these tracking script ones, it's actually these sort of like subsets of the user event. And you could use z.partial to do that, but it is maybe easier to define these explicitly, is what I'm thinking. Okay, and then the URL that we're actually getting currently from the tracking script, because it is being passed in, is the href. So that's the whole location, the whole URL, not just the path. And that's fine, but we don't really need that. So I might do something like this, const URL, new URL, this. And then we would do like URL dot, I don't know if there's a good way to do that actually. Well, let's just leave it like that for now. And we could do something kind of janky, but it would be like URL dot path name. The problem with this is it doesn't have like the query parameters or anything. Now there's a question, do we want to track the query parameters? If we do, it's probably a separate thing from the URLs. And really, I don't really want to track the query parameters. So actually, I'm just going to do this as location.pathname, I guess, for now. And someday, if we do want to support tracking query parameters, we can add that. Okay. Response preview. What are we getting here? Terminal. Oh yeah, that. Okay, so we actually, this is kind of an annoying thing because I don't have a migration system set up. Pretty much the only easy way for me to actually get that new column into my table is just deleting the database and allowing it to be recreated, which is fine for testing. Now we're getting another error. What's going on? Expected Boolean received number. What? Is no script true? Here, why did it receive number? Oh, is this like a SQLite thing? Did I define this wrong? That's a Boolean. But I wonder if SQLite converts a Boolean to a number or something. Where's my SQLite documentation? Data types. Yerp. Okay, so we need a parsing thing for that. So this is where we could actually use a z.preprocess here, Boolean from number. And I guess it would be something like that. And I'll put that in my SQL utilities here. It's one of the things I'm not a huge fan about with SQLite. It sort of doesn't have a lot of data types, you know, so you sort of have to do this fairly frequently. So we've got maybe a number value. Let's just say we don't know what it is. And it'll return undefined or Boolean. Okay, so if value equals 1, return true. If it's 0, return false. Otherwise, return undefined. Relatively simple. Hopefully that works. I always get kind of confused with this where it's like, should I put the default inside the preprocess or outside? I think outside. And if I look at these types, so like this is fine, I guess. And I could also have something where it's like if Boolean dot, is there like a is Boolean? If type of value equals Boolean, then return value. Because we sort of need to pass through the original type as well. It's kind of a nuisance, but fine. And ideally, this would be a Boolean or a number. Let's say number or null or undefined. something like that. So now the type of this should be that. Okay, so that should have fixed that weird casting error, and we can kind of reuse that where we need to, if we have any other Booleans. And the reason that that's happening is because in our model here, we're parsing the response through the schema that comes out of the SQLite database, as well as parsing the response that goes, or the data that goes in. We're also parsing the data that comes out. And so we can use these preprocess commands to convert from the SQLite format into the standard, whatever format, what you would expect it to be in regular JavaScript. Okay, so let's do this. So this is like adding the isNoScript flag. And I'll just do those at once, doesn't really matter. Okay, add isNoScript column. And then these two are going to be, yeah, we've got our URL there as expected. So these are going to be send path name from client. Okay. Let's see, do I have any notes to update here? So this, I'm just going to check off not possible. I mean, we can use it to get the host name, but we wouldn't be using refer for that anyway. Okay. Quick time check. Oh yeah, got plenty of time left. Let's do a little work on the actual dashboard now. We've got kind of our framework of the server set up. Let's do some stuff here. So usually when it comes to the dashboard, I like to have another folder, a folder called components, and then I just have a folder for each React component in there. So this home, I'm going to put into components. App is kind of special, so I might not put that into components. For now, anyway. Actually, yeah, let's put it in components. Okie doke. And this, yep, fine. Just got a random crash because that's how Bun rolls. Okay, so now let's think about what we want to actually have in our dashboard here. So obviously the basic level is you could have a table of all of the events, but that's not really useful from the perspective of somebody who's trying to understand the, characteristics of people visiting our site. So if I think about what, and I'm going to maybe make some notes here. What we want in the dashboard. Table of path names with number of hits per path. Number of, number of unique visitors, user ID, number of total page hits, average time spent on page total. And maybe this could actually all kind of be under this one table, because there could be just like a total row in the table as well. Number of uniques, number or average time spent, include total as well. Have I seen Versal's analytics dashboard? Quite nice, very simple. Have I? I did used to use Versal, but I switched off it. But I might actually still have an account. Let's see if I can just log in with my GitHub account here. Versal. Kind of seems like it's not an account that I was using. Otherwise, I wouldn't need to authorize it. So let's not worry about that right now. But no, I haven't. If you wanted to send me a screenshot. Oh, you did send me a screenshot. Okay. Okay, so let's kind of analyze this. So there's total number of visitors. Oh, what the heck? Go back. Yeah. Okay. Total number of visitors. And the minus, so that's kind of interesting. It's like shows you the change over time with relation to something else, maybe the past 7-day window before this. Total number of page views. Bounce rate. I don't really know what that is, but maybe that's if they only spend a few seconds on the page. So let me make a note here. Total number of visitors. Total page views. Bounce rate. Whatever that is. So these are like the major metrics. Include diff with previous window too. There's more detailed information, but you have to click into it. Yeah, it's hard to get a lot of that across in a screenshot, but that's all right. I don't need to copy it exactly anyway. So then there's like, yeah, the pages thing. That's like the page table. A table of referrers. That's interesting. I'll call that pages. Table of referrers. Don't really know how that's figured out. Oh, UTM param. No, that's something else. Yeah, that's fine. Countries, devices, operating systems. Table of countries, if we can. Table of devices, which would be based on the user agent header, I guess, and maybe some inspecting of properties in the browser because they all lie about their user agent header. And operating systems. Actually, the devices, yeah, okay. That's separate browsers. And events, that doesn't really apply here. Nor does flags. Okay, we can do something like that. And then there's obviously, you have to select your look back window. Select window to analyze. An alternate view, 30 days. Okay, let's see what that one's got. Dunk. Okay, so this one, switching from visitors to page views. and it kind of aggregates the data differently based on the page views instead of based on the visitors, it looks like. But it's still the same kind of thing. Host names. I am kind of interested in host names too. Table of host names. Aggregate tables based on either unique visitors or page views. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, yeah, let's do something like this. Not exactly, of course, but similar. And I'm probably going to use Spectrum, React Spectrum. This is a relatively easy React-based UI library to install and use, as I recall. It doesn't really have a lot of external dependencies. And it's got good interactive stuff. Let's do it. Can always switch later. Bun add React Spectrum. This is what I used for Dust. Takes it a moment to load because it's got to spin up a new container. But this is like a React Spectrum app here. So, you know. Anyway, yeah. Works fine. The bottom left box is very powerful. You can freely define events, pass data to them, and they show up there. Yeah, that does make sense. That's like a big feature of, you know, a lot of these analytics apps where it's like you want to know, like, did the user take X action, right? Like, did they click on this new feature that I added or whatever? And then you can sort of analyze those specific events instead of just like, did they visit the page? But ultimately, I'm not going to include that, at least to start with, because it's not part of the use case that I have. But it would be kind of cool. Like I could imagine if you have a blog, you could have like an event for like submitted comment. It's like, did the user submit a comment or whatever? ShadCN, it is lighter, but it's actually harder to set up. Partly because of that. So that's kind of why I like Spectrum. I'm not too concerned about the file size. I used ShadCN on another app that I've been working on recently, and it doesn't play very well with Bun's compile pipeline. There is a way to get it to work, and I did get it working. But it just is a bit of a pain. The issue is Tailwind. You know, the Tailwind sort of, I don't know if you would call it a compile pipeline for Tailwind, but whatever it is a bit complicated to set up. Because like if we go back here, we're taking advantage of Bun's default like built-in HTML bundling here. So we're removing, like we don't have any dependency on like Vite or Vite or however you pronounce it, or any other third-party bundling thing. We're using the Bun's built-in bundling. But as a result of that, it's not really, there is a plugin for Tailwind, but it's just annoying to get it to work. Yeah. But I might switch to ShadCN at some point. I don't know. I do like it quite a bit, and it does have charts, which actually is a big thing that maybe I should think about. I do want the charts. Yeah, maybe I'll just try to get it working here. See how that works. Let's get rid of React Spectrum then for the moment. And I will do the Tailwind stuff. So kind of the reason that I feel like I could maybe do this is because I've done it in an app already. So I'm going to sort of copy from that the magic stuff that's needed to get it to work. Let's just do this. Components.json. And this would be like slash dashboard slash components. That seems fine. That's fine, I guess, doesn't really matter. Source dashboard globals.css. I'll need to create that file. If I look at my source dashboard globals.css, copy all of this jazz. Yep. And then that needs to be imported from here, I think. Globals.css. Right. Or, oh, I actually have this kind of other layer here. Maybe I'll do it that way too, here too. So we'll do another file, index.css. And over here, index. Yep. Okay. And then the other thing was in the server, like we just need to tell Bun to use Tailwind here. New file, bunfig.toml. I don't really know what this env is used for, but this is all just copy pasted from some setup, getting started guides. Yes, and then I need to install the thing. I don't need to do this because I did that already. Let's look at manual here. Oh yeah, I need the base URL. That's a thing. And I need to add all this stuff. And then I'm also going to need to add Tailwind, right? Is Tailwind even in this list? No, it's up here. Okay, bun, install Tailwind CSS. Okay. I think that might be it, but I'm also sure I'm forgetting something. Let's try doing bun run dev. And reloading the page here. Plugin error. Oh, gotta install the plugin too. Bun add bun plugin Tailwind. Okay. Oh yeah. So I was using that topography thing. Let's just comment that out until I need it. Can't resolve Tailwind CSS animate. But I did install that. Is that a separate thing I have to do? Why is that even there? Not here. Maybe I don't need that at all. Maybe it should be like this. Okay, we've got our stuff. That's good. So let's try installing a component and see if it works here. But it should be one I actually want to use. Let's just do a navigation menu to start with. I don't know if I'm actually going to need one or not, but we'll just install it. Oh. Yoink. Okay. It installed it. So now I should be able to, this import's not working. At util/UI. Oh, I need to create this file myself. UI.ts. And then that is going to have some stuff in it. This stuff. Okay, so now that should work, right? I mean, I did add it, so you know it's there. Okay, so now if I, let's say in home here, just import that navigation menu. Is that what it's called? Let's just copy this. I just kind of want to see that it works. And, you know, we can kind of wrap this all in a fragment so it doesn't have multiple roots. And then we can import from that. And then add all missing imports. Okay. And let's see what it looks like. Does it look weird or does it look good? Looks good. Okay. You know, if the tailwind actually wasn't working, then it would just look all weird. Alrighty, so this is pretty good. Let me commit all this stuff. I sort of have that navigation menu thing kind of wrapped up in it all now, which it doesn't really matter, I guess. Let's just do all of this at once. Okay. And this will be add shad cn UI and navigation menu component. And we can do like tailwind. Yeah. Okay. So the interesting thing about this is this works in development, but when you actually deploy it, you can't like bundle it, or that I haven't gotten it to work with bun build, because the bun build command doesn't yet accept plugins. It doesn't support these plugins. But I think that's going to be okay. The issue is we kind of have to have like a start command, which I'm actually just going to add here. Start. And, you know, it's just going to do this. And it's actually going to run this in production. So it's actually going to be doing the bundling like on the fly in production. Yeah, I'm hoping they will add it in 1.3 or at some point. It's clearly called out in the docs that it's not supported yet, which kind of implies that they're planning on supporting it. And it is supported in like the bun.build thing. But I don't really know where actually it talks about it. But it's not yet supported with the actual bun build command line thing. You have to use this API, not this API. And yeah, I don't know where, like this. Anyway, all this bun stuff is very beta, so it makes sense. I'm kind of doing the early adopter thing here, which is often not a good idea in my experience, but you know, I really like what bun is doing, so I want to use it. And then when they add features, I'm like, hey, I want to use that new feature. He filmed the bun version 1.3 video. That's exciting. Looking forward to it. Every new version, they add some more cool stuff. And it seems to get more stable too, which is nice. Okay, let's just add this to add start command. We'll need that when we actually construct a Docker file, which I haven't gotten around to doing yet. Usually I use Fly's like built-in Docker file generation thing to generate a Docker file. Okay. Now we need to kind of think about the UI here. So this is where I have to actually use my brain. So I sort of like how Vercel has it. I'm going to do something similar where there's tabs at the top for each of the major like visitors versus views. And then clicking on those tabs kind of shifts how the rest of the page is rendered, but it still is rendering the same major stuff. And then the other big thing is like the look back window that we need. So let's actually get rid of this until we need it. I don't know, date picker. It's not really what I want for the look back window. Probably just a drop down menu. Okay. And so we're going to have something. Let's make it as a new component here. We'll call this look back chooser. And this will, I guess, export const look back chooser. Return drop down menu. Let's sort of copy the structure again. And do that. The reason I do the import this way, because you'll notice like the default when I did that first add import was the Radix UI one. But now that I have added at least one import from this module, the default is to update the imports from that existing module. So now I can do add all missing imports like that. But if I didn't do it that way and just did add all missing imports, it's actually going to import them from Radix UI. So you kind of have to do this two-step thing if you want to have VS Code know where to update the imports from. Oh, and I did it wrong. Add all missing imports. Okay, and this trigger we will call, let's call it look back for now. And then in here, let's do Punrinda. I should really have a new tab for my shadcn commands. Oh yeah, actually I have to use this look back chooser. Look back chooser. Yep. So I don't really think we need the label there. And, you know, we could do something like 7 days or like 1 day, 7 day, 30 day for now. And eventually we would want users to be able to put in their own time range, but I'll deal with that later. 365 day. Okay. And the trigger, you know, should actually be a button. Right? Like if we look at this code, the trigger is a button. Yeah. Obviously button is a good one to install. Where's my, I'll just copy it from here. Oops, that's the wrong one. Button. Okay, this would be button. Look back. And here we're going to have how do we want to do the state management? I guess I'll just have it be like a controlled state here. So we'll have value, which will be a number. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's do it like, let's just say props value number of days. And obviously we'll need a better way of handling that. Is it one page? Yeah, it's going to be one page. I don't even know if there's going to be like even more than one page. If there is, I'll use like something like React Router, usually is what I reach for, to add like multiple pages within the same single page application, you know? But I feel like for the analytics, it's like, at least to start with, there's probably just going to be the one page to begin with. There will be no navigation that you actually need to do until we add like settings or something. Maybe would actually be a separate React Router page. But it'll all be within the same React context. So I could have like a shared state. A lot of times I'll have like a shared state at the kind of root of the project injected via a context or whatever, something like that. You know, I know people use like Redux or MobX and things like that. But I usually find that to be a little bit overcomplicated for the size of apps that I'm working on for side projects. So this is value number and like on change, which is going to be a function that accepts value number and returns void. Okay. And I'll just put the value in here. And like %, props.value 10. Oh, wait, I did that backwards. This would be props.value .toString. I guess I don't even really need the toString. And we'll set this to value. Let's just start it at 10. Well, it started at 1. And then on change, I guess I'll make that optional. Although really it should always be passed, but oh, it's like doing a dark mode thing. Is it? Or like, why is that black? Is it doing the primary variant maybe? Button variant. I feel like this is probably just outline. Yeah, fine. Okay. And I guess I should figure out the state management sooner rather than later. So let's just do that now. Let's just do something kind of janky here. And we will get a I guess it can be exported right from here. We'll export a context provider. Which I don't really remember how that works. There's like create context, default value, just an empty object, maybe, or maybe I could say like look back 7. And what does this return again? It returns app state context. Right, and then here I would have like a provider. And I guess I could put it, well, it doesn't really matter. App state context.provider. And like normally, you know, if I was using React Router, the actual router would go underneath the provider as well. But don't need to worry about that yet. Value state like that, because we want use state and set state. And then like export const, and maybe this doesn't need to be exported. Use app state equals hook return app state context dot something. Isn't that how you do it? How does this work? I just want the docs. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, this one. Oh, use context. Okay. So this would be return use context, app state context. That makes sense. Okay. So, and what's going on here? Do I need to do that? Oh, okay. That, right. This could just be, it's kind of a pain. Let's see. What is this? I need a default value. I'm just going to make it an empty array. And the type of this is going to be the type of this, which I'm actually going to copy this over here. And let's define a type for our app state. Export interface app state. I sort of like the global state pattern, especially for things like the look back where it's like going to be widely used when we're fetching data and so on. But then if something isn't global, you know, I try and store that within a state within the component, kind of encapsulate that state if it's not global. Like whether or not a dropdown is dropped down, obviously that's not something that we need to know everywhere in the app, right? Okay. Look back number. So then this would be app state and let state action app state. And this could be I mean, let's just do this. Const default state is that. We can use that here. I don't really like that you have to set the default state twice. There's probably a way around that. But this would be like something like that. Oh, I got those backwards. Okay. So now in home here, or really even in the look back chooser, we can actually, we don't even need to pass these as props anymore. We can just pull it directly from the state. App state, set app state equals use app state. And get rid of these props. In theory, you could still do the props. Like, you know, there's different opinions about that, where you should be pulling the app state versus pulling things in via props. But I'm just going to do it this way, kind of minimize the number of parameters that you have to pass through the different components. Okay, and set app state we're not using yet. Don't have to worry about that quite yet. And this, yeah, still working. Okay, so now we've got our look back, still says 7 days. If I change the default to 1, it's 1 day. Yeah, so that is working. All right. So now we need to update the app state. Let's make a callback for that. Doesn't really matter too much if it's totally handle, look back, change, use callback. new value, number. And this would do set app state app state look back equals new value. And kind of the problem with this approach, like, so then down here I would do like on click is a function, handle look back change 1. The problem with this is this anonymous function here technically is going to cause this component to re-render more than it needs to. But it's a lot more convenient than having to define like one callback for each value here. I'm not sure if there's a better way to do that I just don't know about. I mean, I guess, so with the on click, yeah, there's probably a better way, but whatever. Okay, let's see if that works though. So go over here, refresh. If I switch this to 30 days, it updates. Yep, great. Fairly simple. Let us, what's this? Oh, okay. Installing some more stuff. So here we're going to add lookback chooser. Sure. And then we can actually start using that. Oh yeah, get rid of that. Let's amend my commit there. Don't need that in there. Okay. And, you know, this would be kind of, I mean, yeah. Let's get rid of that too, actually. I'm not going to worry too much about styling it yet, I guess is what I'm thinking. And so these events, this is actually going to need the app state. Use app state. And app state dot lookback. And this is going to need lookback as a number. And here in this fetch, we'll just do it like this. Oops. Lookback equals lookback. Obviously, the server doesn't support this yet, but that'll be the next step. So now if I look at my network tab, if I change this, is it going to do another? I feel like there's kind of a data dependency issue here. So that's lookback 7. If I switch it to 30, it's not going to actually update this query. I need to figure out a way to do that. I wonder, actually, what if I did this? There. Is that going to update it? It does not. So the So what I could do is a manual invalidation, but that's a bit janky. But maybe I will do that. So let's actually get rid of this. Get rid of this. And get rid of that. And then over here in the lookback chooser, we'll set the app state, and then we will also do query client dot invalidate queries. And I think it's like events or something like that, right? Okay, so that is the query key. Maybe I need to pass that in like an object. Query key events. And I don't really like this kind of implicit, you have to know about a different part of the app in order to, like, it's not, the code is not well localized, right? Because in order for this to work, it's sort of tied up with how this other file works. So one thing I could do to make that at least a little better is I could have like an invalidate events function. And then down here, I could do const invalidate events. And I guess return, I guess this is async. Kind of. We could await that. Okay. So now, if I update this to 30 days, okay, it's still doing 7, and that time it did 30. So now there's like an ordering issue going on. Probably the set app state is being batched somehow. There must be a better pattern for this. I just don't know what it is. Let's see what the TanStack query docs has to say. I think what's happening right now is it's like, so we've got this thing here. It's calling both of these. Well, one thing, I should probably have that be there. I don't think that really matters all that much though. It's like it's calling both of these things at once. The set app state is probably being in the background batched by React to execute on the next animation frame or something like that. Meanwhile, the invalidate events is sort of happening immediately. And so it validates the event and it does this thing, but the app state isn't yet updated. But then if you do it again, then it's updated. But there must be like a better pattern for like having your query depend on some state. See, we're not really doing a mutation on the server, but it's kind of a mutation, right? It's just like a client-only mutation. So I don't know if that's how I'm supposed to do it. Maybe I should look at this query function variables. Let's ask Google. TanStack query. Function depends on React state. I don't know if this is really the thing, but one thing that does make me think is I could actually put it as a query key. It's going to conflict with this down here, though, is the thing. But that's kind of okay. I think. It's sort of weird, though. I'm sort of curious to see what this does. I don't think it's going to work as is, but I kind of want to try it. So that's 7. Now if I switch that to 30, it's doing 2 now. So that's not really right. But if I remove this, 7, 30, 365. Okay, that seems to work better. This is a great ChatGPT question. Yeah, I think you're right. Because it's kind of just like interpreting the documentation. There's probably a better way to do it than this, but I don't mind this actually having like the look back here. Seems to work pretty well. And then I don't even need this invalidate events function at all, which is nice. Don't need that, which is nice. Okay. This, don't need that or that. Yes. Okay. I haven't really used TanStack query much before, so I sort of have to get in the habit of like thinking about it in the way that it wants me to think about it. You know what I mean? And maybe the lesson here is like if your query is dependent on local state, that should always be in the query key. Seems like the approach that at least worked here. Use lookback window in use events hook. Okay. So I like this because like each, say each chart or whatever can actually use that use events hook to just get events. And it's automatically going to get the events for the right lookback window. And it's all going to be, cached instead of having to pass that value through everything. Okay. Yes. So now let's do on the server. in here, we will need to accept a lookback window request.query.lookback or 7. Default to 7. And I think that's how it would work, right? Like request dot. Why don't I have the autocomplete on this? I still don't really like that. But if I put this in, then I do. Okay, so query is not a property here. What is? There's a URL. There's params, but I think params is like these things. Right? Yeah, because that's an empty object. Yeah, so I guess I have to parse out the URL. It's kind of annoying. Request dot URL dot, or no, URL search params. New URL search params, request.url. I think this needs to be something like new URL, request.url dot search. Query params dot get lookback. Yeah, I think that'll work, something like that. And then in get all events, we need to actually, let's actually log that just to, make sure that little piece of weirdness is working. And it's not. What if I logged this? Okay, so it's got that. Is this not how you use this URL search params? I thought it was. Constructor. A string. I mean, it seems right. Oh, there's a typo in the query param. Okay. Let's go over here. This should be look back. Now it's working. Excellent. Get rid of this. Also, it occurs to me we need to pass this through a parse int. Okay. Then get all events is going to accept that look back number. And we're going to need to do some weirdness here. So this is like where where start at, right? No, start time is greater than something like time stamp now minus 7 days. Is this a thing? Or except it would be minus look back. Let's just see if this works, first of all. Well, let's do it like that. Look back days. This is kind of weird. I'll need to adjust that, but I don't even know if this no such function timestamp. I guess I might need to actually do that on the client, not an, or the server, not the database. So like if we do start time equals date.now minus or new date. Let's do it like this. Start time dot set date. Start time dot get date minus look back. And I think, does that mutate? I can never remember if these mutate the date. I think it does. Let's make sure. Yeah, it does mutate it. And you can see it's setting it to 7 days earlier. So that's kind of what we want. And then, say if I do like 365, it should also roll it back to earlier months and stuff as well, automatically. Doesn't look like it is, though. Like if I do 27, just as a more something. Okay, so that worked. That did work. Why did 365 not work? Oh, maybe it did work. It was just, I didn't notice. Yeah, the year changed, 2025 to 2024. Okay, cool. So that is getting us our new date. And then we can pass that in here, look back, except we would call this like start time dot to dot get date. No, get time. Yes. And then this would be start time greater than start time. I guess I'll use the colon for consistency. Okay. So now, that should work. Obviously, both of the times are today. So that's kind of hard to test whether it's working. Out of curiosity, if I did the look back as 0 In fact, let's do it all the way over here in this spot, 0. It doesn't match anything. So, I mean, it seems like it's probably working. So let's do this. Fix typo in query parameter. And support look back parameter on the server. Okay. Okay. So with that, you know, we are ready to start analyzing our events. We've got our you know, our stuff. So time check. Bit over time. I kind of want to do a little more though. Let's see here. Are there tabs? Is there like a tabs thing? Yeah. I feel like we could use this to sort of support that visitors versus whatever else. But at the same time, we're not really going to be changing the content. It's going to be the same content more or less. So maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we just want like a button group. Is that a thing? Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. Let's just do a couple buttons. So we will have in home here, we can do a div, and this is going to have a button. Import that. And these are going to kind of change how the events are parsed, but for now we're just going to put in some text. So like visitors, something. And we'll have another one, visits. And I'm just going to kind of implement these, calculating these numbers for now. And then I think I'll wrap it up here. Gosh. Wait, yeah, let's do it like this. Trying to get that autocomplete. So this could be, I don't know, outline again. I kind of want it to be almost like secondary, actually. And then like the one that's selected would be primary. Is it not primary? What's the variant called? Default. So then you would be like switching between them here. But I'm not going to implement that yet. Okay, so here we're going to have like num visitors and num visits. And we've got our events. So then we would say, you know, num visitors equals, I almost want to pull in some like Lodash things here. I feel like it's going to be helpful instead of trying to re-implement a lot of this like junky array stuff. Like I think there's like a count by type of situation. You could do like a group by. Oh, there is a count by. Yeah. But that's not really what I want either. Oh well, let's just do it by hand for now. Maybe we could add that later. So here we're going to do events dot reduce. Let's just do something relatively simple to understand. And instead of memo, we could call it like visitors event visitors, and let's add this set dot, wait, did I get these backwards? Previous value visitors. Yeah, so visitors should be a set, not a whatever this is. Visitors dot add event dot user ID. Return visitors. Okay, so now this should be a set, and then we would just do dot count or something like that, dot size to get our number of visitors. And visits is just the length of the array. Okay, so this makes sense. We have two visits, right? And they both have the same user ID, so there's one visitor. And I can't really adjust the look back window to the point that they're going to disappear. If I add another one here that is like 0 days, if I set this to 0, and I switch that to 0, then those numbers automatically update to use the new look back window. Okay, let's just commit that. Add visitors and visits buttons. Yeah, so that kind of sets a precedent for how we can be sort of reading the data here. Probably the next thing will be to add some tables and charts down here, and then clicking these will switch how that's aggregated. So maybe that's actually something to add too, like in the global state here, we would also have like aggregation type visitors or visits. Aggregation type visitors. And this should be app state. Okay. So with that, we can actually implement this where these variants can be we got to use app state. And then if app state dot aggregation type equals visitors, then this is default. Otherwise, it's secondary. And the same thing down here, except with visits. And maybe these should be a component. I might put this into their own component later. And then they also need an on-click. And here we can do use app state. And const change aggregation type. Use callback. New type. String. And need an array here too, and that will have use app state or set app state, which is what this should be. So then this is going to set app state app state and aggregation type, new type. And this might as well make an actual type for this so that we don't have all these TypeScript errors. Export type That would be this. And then this is this. And then this imports. Yes, okay. So then this gets to change aggregation type, visitors. And this one gets to, let's copy this whole line, visits. Okay, so now we should see them switch colors basically when I click on one or the other. Yeah. It didn't have one by default though. It also didn't have the data loaded. That was kind of weird. What's up with that? If I do a clean rebuild here, refresh. Okay, it is working. Looks like. So then in theory, you click on one or the other and it's going to kind of change how the data is aggregated. Okay. Yeah, let's commit that. And actually, I might amend this into the last commit because we're still just doing stuff with those same buttons. Yes. Okay. I think that's pretty good. What are my changes here? Update notes. All right. I think I'm going to wrap up. Made a lot of progress, it feels like. What's going on here? Let's do it like that. Okay. Fix TypeScript error. Okay, yeah, gonna wrap up. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again next week. Actually, let me push my changes. Doesn't really matter. All right, see you later.